He once said she was peace, that she grounded him, that her silence was the only thing that calmed his storms. But silence, to a man addicted to applause, eventually sounds like absence. Would you stay if the one who praised your presence started performing like you were no longer in the room? He said she was peace. Have you ever been the steady one, only to be treated like furniture once the crowd arrived? Too many people only value peace when chaos is loud. But what if peace walks away and takes everything with it? Jasmine Vale didn't chase applause. Not when she graduated valedictorian from her inner-city high school. Not when she earned a dual law and business degree while working night shifts. And certainly not when she married Corin Aden, the rising tech billionaire who built Aden. Global, from a six-man startup in a damp garage to an international lifestyle empire. She didn't marry him for power. She married him because in the early days he saw her. Back then, Corin said things like, "You're the only one I can think straight around. Your quiet resets me. I don't want someone who wants me for the man I'll be on stage. I want the woman who knows me off it." And Jasmine believed him. She had no need to be the billionaire's wife. She didn't attend all the launches. She didn't decorate herself like a brand. She didn't hire stylists or leak couple photos to press. She was behind the scenes, managing the family foundation, restructuring deals through trust accounts, helping edit board charters when Corin's lawyers got too flashy. Corin called her his calm engine, and in public he praised her, not loudly, but enough. "She's the reason I sleep at night," he once told Forbes. "I'd be reckless without her." Jasmine never asked for more. She only asked for consistency, but consistency became too still for a man like Corin Aden. Once the spotlight grew bigger than their dining table, he didn't crave peace. He missed feeling wanted, worshipped, adored. And Jasmine? She didn't know how to perform for cameras. She knew how to work, to build, to advise quietly in rooms that made billion-dollar decisions. But she never danced for attention. So, slowly, she was pushed into the background. It started small. Fewer appearances. "Come next time," he'd say. "Tonight's more media-heavy." Jasmine didn't argue. He began flying solo to events, branding himself as a visionary, not as a husband. His photos showed him alone, or flanked by glitter. And then, it wasn't subtle anymore. Jasmine watched him change the same way she watched clouds darken before winter storms. Slow but certain. And when he started keeping secrets, he didn't even try that hard. Because men who crave applause don't think the quiet woman will ever leave. Jasmine Vale didn't need to be the loudest in a room. She understood early that silence could be more commanding than noise. Raised by a seamstress mother and a high school counselor father, she learned that presence didn't require sparkle. It required substance. Her parents taught her that if you knew what you brought to the table, you didn't have to announce your arrival. And for a time, that truth shaped every room she walked into. She was never the one posting, never the one chasing spotlights. But she was always the one people remembered when it came time to make decisions. The one who listened. The one who asked the questions no one else caught. The one who read contracts twice while others skimmed. She didn't just marry Corin Aden. She helped make him. They met at a clean tech panel hosted in Chicago, years before he became a Forbes list billionaire. He was rough around the edges then, brilliant but unpolished. His pitch deck had typos. His board was all male. He'd never heard of structuring an investment trust to shield early-stage losses. Jasmine approached him after his talk. She asked him one question. "Who owns your name?" He blinked. "I do?" She smiled once. "Are you sure?" She wasn't flirting. She was alerting. Corin's company had been using the Aden name, but he hadn't trademarked it internationally. He hadn't even filed brand protection in the EU. Jasmine handed him a card. Not with her title, not with her company, just a number. He called 3 days later. They met over coffee. Then again. Then again. By month 3, she'd redrafted his equity agreements, looped in 3 new silent investors, and rewritten the brand protection clause across 5 markets. By year 2, they were married. At first, Corin admired Jasmine's quiet. When interviews became too noisy, when team politics got wild, when Silicon Valley egos made him question everything, he'd call her. She didn't tell him what to do. She just listened. And in the space she left, he often found his own answers. He said things like, "You're the reason I think straight. You don't demand attention, and that's why I give it. You're the only thing in my life not trying to monetize me." It was true. Jasmine didn't need him for money. She had her own. She had plans, properties, and projects before him. But she loved building with him. They were strategic partners as much as they were spouses. She structured the Aiden Global Foundation, helped outline the charitable trust tied to his late sister's name, advised on acquisition language that helped avoid 3 lawsuits. She didn't ask for press. She didn't show up on red carpets. When photographers called out, "Where's your wife?" Corin would wave it off. She prefers to make moves, not appearances. And for a while, that answer earned him more praise. But something changed. It didn't happen overnight. It happened quietly, like respect leaving a room through a back door. Corin started chasing the high of newness, new faces, new praise, new muses that adored him without knowing what made him difficult. And Jasmine? She started feeling like a seatbelt in a car that now preferred the thrill of risk. The texts slowed. The meetings grew shorter. He began attending more international forums without her, though she once helped him draft speeches. He stopped asking for her review on brand acquisitions. And when she'd speak up, he'd say, "It's fine, Jazz. It's just a partnership, not a marriage proposal." That one stung. The first time Jasmine saw Giselle's name mentioned, it was in a headline, "Aiden Global CEO seen with rising PR exec at Innovation Mixer." The article mentioned charm and chemistry and easy laughter. Corin didn't deny it. He didn't hide it. He just stopped bringing it up, as if he believed Jasmine would stay quiet forever, as if he forgot who taught him how to be powerful. She didn't confront him. She didn't storm into meetings. She didn't cry into pillows. She watched. She documented. She began pulling her name off of things. Softly, strategically. Her name left advisory boards, left certain trusts, left properties quietly placed under holding companies she once created for him. She wasn't leaving yet. She was preparing. Because dignity doesn't leave in anger. It leaves in order. The week before the gala, Jasmine knew it would be the night Corin made it official. She knew the winter gala would be photographed, covered, monetized. He was set to announce a major expansion into luxury AI wearables, and he'd want a visual companion for the story. That wasn't her role anymore. She chose a navy blue gown. Simple, no glitter. Wore her hair up in the way Corin once said made her look dangerous in the best way. She arrived late, not because she was trying to make a scene, but because she wanted to see the truth before it was spun. She stood on the second-floor balcony overlooking the ballroom. The lights hit the stage. Corin stepped up, sleek in a tailored tux. Giselle was beside him, all glow and performance. And then, he said it. "This woman, she's everything I've ever wanted." The room clapped. The flashes burst. Giselle beamed. Corin smiled for the crowd. Jasmine didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She just nodded once and left. That nod wasn't defeat. That nod was a timestamp. The exact moment Jasmine Vale decided, "We're done." The next morning, the headlines said everything. CEO's gala glow up. Who's the woman beside Aiden? Aiden's winter expansion, PR heat, and one eye-catching guest is billionaire Corin Aiden officially off the market again? Officially. Again. Jasmine read the headlines in silence. Her name wasn't in any of them. Not even a line. Not even a mention of the wife who built the empire's bones. She turned off her phone. Sat still in the reading nook by the window. A mug of untouched coffee sat on the tray beside her. Snow was melting on the edge of the balcony rail. Everything outside looked cold but clean. Inside, still. Jasmine didn't need confirmation from him. The public declaration was enough. Corin had made his move. He just didn't expect hers would follow with the same silence he used to love. When he walked into the house later that evening, there was no tension in his step. He kissed her cheek like everything was normal, as if the world hadn't just watched him tell another woman she was his everything. "You good?" he asked casually, removing his cufflinks. Jasmine looked up from her folder. "Are you?" He laughed lightly, tossed his suit jacket over the chair. "Long night." Giselle got a little overwhelmed by the press. You know how first-timers get. She didn't respond, not with a smirk, not with a blink. She just turned a page. Corin watched her. "You're not going to ask me anything?" "No." He tilted his head. "Not even what the board thought of the speech?" "I already know." He scoffed under his breath. "Right, of course you do." Then, like always, he pivoted. "Anyway, PR says we're trending, but there's a little backlash about the 'everything I've ever wanted' line. Might want you to step in, reframe things. You've always been good at smoothing out edges." He said it like it was a compliment, like it was still her job. Jasmine reached for a different folder, slid it toward him. A clean, sealed envelope. "What's this?" "A reviewed and notarized separation agreement. One that protects my personal holdings and removes me from your front-facing brand." Corin's face didn't change right away. He was a trained CEO, good at suppressing first reactions, but his right hand twitched slightly on the table edge. "You're serious?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. "You want to embarrass me now?" "No," she said, calm. "I want to prevent further embarrassment." Corin stood still, then walked toward the bar and poured a drink. He sipped once. He always did that when he needed time to think. One sip, one pause, then posture. "I never said I was leaving you," he muttered, still looking at the glass. "You didn't have to," Jasmine replied. "You know how this world works, Jazz. People make appearances. It's all branding." She looked directly at him. "Then let this be mine." Corin's expression tightened. "You're going to leave me over one speech?" Jasmine gave him a soft look. "No. I'm leaving because you've made 20 small decisions that led to that speech." She had watched him choose performance over partnership for months. When he removed her from panel planning, when he began telling junior executives not to loop Jasmine in, when her private emails got forwarded without her knowledge, when Giselle started using phrases in press kits that Jasmine herself had coined. He didn't just cheat with a woman. He cheated with attention, with image, with illusion. And now, that illusion had taken center stage. So Jasmine quietly exited it. That night, she slept in the guest suite for the first time. Not in anger, just clarity. She texted her legal advisor. "Proceed with the asset extraction clauses. Use draft B. No press release yet." She sent another message to an old friend who owned a boutique legal firm. "Clear your Thursday. I want a full walkthrough of the Aiden family estate trust." The next morning, she took down all the framed magazine covers in the hallway, not in bitterness. She simply no longer wanted to be a museum piece in a house where history was being rewritten without her. She packed 3 boxes, labeled them legal, legacy, personal. Everything else stayed. She didn't need to take the home with her. She was the home. By the end of the week, Corin stopped pretending. He moved out for a media reset. Jasmine didn't correct anyone's assumptions. She didn't post cryptic quotes. She didn't share soft-lit photos of herself in a silk robe sipping tea. She let the silence do what it always had, work in her favor. Behind the scenes, she froze joint accounts tied to 3 companies she personally established. She moved her private equity shares to a protection trust. She issued a statement to Aiden Global's legal team, confirming her withdrawal from all unofficial brand dealings. She wasn't being petty. She was preserving what she built. Corin had the cameras. Giselle had the praise. But Jasmine, she had the keys. And she never needed applause to use them. If you've ever watched someone disrespect a quiet woman, drop a comment below. Quiet doesn't mean blind. And stillness isn't surrender. 2 weeks after the Winter Gala, Jasmine Vale stepped into the Mercer hotel lobby with clean makeup, a charcoal wool coat, and no entourage. She wasn't there for the photo shoot happening upstairs or the influencers pretending to read financial reports over cappuccinos. She was there to meet a journalist, one she trusted, the kind who didn't chase viral headlines, the kind who once wrote an entire feature on invisible labor in luxury brands and named Jasmine's work anonymously. Jasmine had agreed to speak, not to spill, not to shade, but to clarify a single truth: she had not disappeared. The hotel receptionist greeted her with surprise. "Mrs. Aiden." "Just Jasmine, thank you," she said calmly. The woman behind the desk nodded, correcting her own posture, as if standing straighter somehow matched the tone Jasmine carried. She wasn't famous, but she was known for her composure, for how quietly her presence adjusted the temperature of any room. When Jasmine reached the private booth in the back cafe area, her journalist contact stood immediately. "Jasmine, it's good to see you." She sat. "Same." The journalist glanced at the recorder, then back at her. "Before I begin, do you want anything redacted, off limits?" Jasmine looked out the window where soft snow fell over the city. Nothing defamatory, no slander. But if they're quoting me, quote me right. As the recorder clicked on, Jasmine leaned slightly forward and said, "I never left the picture. I just stopped signing it." Across town that same morning, Corinne Aiden was at a breakfast forum hosted by Lux Tech Industries. Giselle Murray sat to his right. She was dressed immaculately, high bun, tailored cream blazer, icy pink lipstick that never smudged. She smiled at every question directed toward them, even the ones she didn't fully understand. Corin answered smoothly, but not once did he say "we." His sentences were, "Aiden Global is, and I plan to." Not once did he refer to Giselle as part of the vision, only part of the visuals, and she noticed. She tried to brush it off with public laughs, adjusted her bracelet, recrossed her legs. But Corin's compliments were colder now, sharper. The way he once praised Jasmine, slow, thoughtful, intentional, wasn't how he treated her. To the room, Giselle was decorative. To Corin, she was replaceable, but she didn't know that yet. 3 tables back sat a woman who used to be on Jasmine's legal team. She watched the panel, took notes, and smiled once. The brand had changed, but the spine was missing. Jasmine didn't need to win the public back. She just needed to remind the right people who built what they now used. Later that week, the press began speculating. Why hasn't Jasmine spoken? Who's really in charge of Aiden Global's core trusts? Did the silent strategist walk away or step aside to reposition? The last headline made her smile, because it wasn't wrong. She went back to her office in the West Loop. It wasn't flashy. A corner suite, 3 assistants, shelves lined with books, not trophies. She never kept plaques on her walls. Her assistant, Renna, stepped in. As Jasmine reviewed a document, "Levan Cross is on line 2. Jasmine glanced up. "Tell him I'll call back in 15, and get me that executive trust file from 2 years ago." Renna grinned. "You sure you don't want me to switch those in priority?" Jasmine allowed a faint smirk. "That's not how I mix my work." Flashback to gala night, unseen moment. Back at the winter gala, after Jasmine had exited the ballroom, she walked through a corridor no one else used. A private staircase led to the parking garage. But just before she turned the corner, someone spoke her name. "Jasmine." She turned. Levan Cross stood there. No camera, no drink, no crowd. Just him, in a slate suit and quiet eyes. "I didn't know you'd come," he said. "I left early." "I know." There was a pause, one that filled the air with something neither of them addressed. He stepped closer. Not too close. "I saw the speech." She said nothing. He added, "You're still the only one who ever built that brand from behind." Jasmine nodded once, the same way she had in the ballroom. Levan didn't press further. But he didn't walk away either. He held the silence with her, letting it sit between them like respect. Back in the present, Jasmine stood at the window of her office, watching the city shift beneath a light snow. Corin might still be trying to win the public, but she was winning something else. Memory. When you leave quiet power behind, people don't forget. they eventually miss it. And when they miss it, they realize the next everything he wanted looks hollow under pressure. Mid-story CTA second, placed organically. Have you ever watched someone chase praise only to lose the person who made their world stable? Comment below if you've ever been the real reason something stayed standing. Quietly. Closing beat of part 1. Jasmine finishes her call with the journalist. She doesn't give a soundbite. She gives a full sentence. It's not about who gets praised the loudest. It's about who gets remembered when the dust settles. She ends the interview. She doesn't stay for photos. She walks out of the hotel with her coat still closed and her chin steady. The invitation arrived 2 days later, delivered by courier in a velvet envelope. Jasmine knew what it was before she opened it. The Aiden Global Spring Preview, a rebranding event meant to introduce their upcoming digital luxury collection, paired with a keynote presentation by Corin Aiden himself. In bold silver letters at the bottom, with honored appearances by Chief Brand Liaison, Giselle Murray Jasmine read the name twice. They'd given her a title, and not just any title. One Jasmine had once declined when Corin offered it to her years ago. She hadn't needed a label to prove her impact. But now, they were dressing someone else in her shadow. She didn't please reply. She didn't need to be in the room to feel the temperature. The world would watch, but Jasmine would feel, and she would move. That afternoon, she sat at her private office desk in a tailored cream blouse, fingers tapping lightly on a manila folder marked Transfer, Personal Holdings. Phase 2. Her eyes were steady, her voice soft. "Renna," she called through the intercom. "Bring me the review copy of the original marriage trust. I want the version that was updated in year 4, not year 1. Jasmine didn't rush decisions, she paced them. And this one? She'd already begun it the moment Corin called someone else everything he ever wanted. Meanwhile, Giselle sat with a stylist at the Eastern Hotel downtown, practicing how to smile without over-smiling. She was being coached on posture, phrase control, and how to respond when the media asked questions about stepping into a public-facing role. Corin had told her it was time to be seen. "Your Grace will do the talking," he'd said. "You don't need to explain anything. Just exist beautifully." And she believed him. What she didn't know was that the trust funding most of the company's PR protection was still under Jasmine's legal framework. And Jasmine? She was quietly closing it. 2 floors below Giselle's rehearsal, a senior staff member who once worked under Jasmine forwarded an email to her personal inbox. Subject: urgent update, internal structuring body. They're starting to unseal documents using the new CBL title. Just flagging it. Let me know if I should forward the source files. C. Jasmine read it and simply replied, "Thank you. Maintain your seat. Watch, don't warn." J. Across the city, Corin sat in his penthouse office reviewing his keynote speech with a copywriter who had no idea what Jasmine used to do for this exact presentation: review slides, adjust tone, guide the rhythm of his voice. The new version felt scripted. He felt it too, but he ignored the tug. He had Giselle, he had the room, he had the cameras. He thought that was enough. The event day came. The lights were pristine. The cameras were synced. Giselle wore a white gown with structured shoulders, delicate, soft-spoken, and perfectly edited. Corin walked her on stage like a CEO presenting his next product line. The crowd clapped, and in a corner of that room stood a man watching silently. Levan Cross. He didn't clap. He didn't blink too long. He simply observed and quietly messaged Jasmine. "They're calling her the face of Aiden Global now." Jasmine replied, "Let her have the face. I structured the spine." That night, press coverage exploded. Aiden Global unveils new muse behind the empire, who is Giselle Murray, the mystery power behind the CEO. The Billionaire's new era. Aiden and Murray step forward. Jasmine didn't respond. She didn't defend, didn't repost. She returned to her foundation's headquarters and signed a single directive. That would shift 2 board seats under her name away from Corin's influence. No press release. Just action. The next day, Corin's CFO called in a mild panic. "We just received word that Jasmine executed an override clause in the charitable development wing. Is this strategic distancing or something else?" Corin paused. He remembered the clause. Jasmine had slipped it into their fourth-year restructuring when they redefined their roles after a tax change. He hadn't read that document in full. He always trusted her. That trust had expired. That night, he texted her. "Corin, did you really need to pull both seats?" "Jasmine, I didn't need to. I chose to. You started rewriting the narrative. I'm just reclaiming my signature from the last chapter." He didn't respond. CTA third, midway story placement. Have you ever watched someone rewrite your story while pretending you never existed? Tell us how you handled it in the comments. Some truths don't need a fight, just a signature. That evening, Jasmine sat alone in her home office. She looked at her own reflection in the dark glass of the window, not searching for herself but confirming she never left. She opened her journal and wrote, "I was never the one he wanted to see, but I was always the one who kept the lights on." She didn't underline it. She didn't need to. As the lights from the Aiden Global event dimmed across the news cycle, a quiet shift was happening behind closed doors. And while everyone clapped for Giselle's entrance, no one saw the signatures Jasmine had sent, pulling power, realigning boards, and repositioning control. Because applause fades, but documents last forever. The announcement didn't come from Jasmine. It came from a press bulletin sent out by Aiden Global's media team. A single paragraph tucked between a product update and a leadership reshuffle. Effective immediately, Jasmine Vale will no longer serve in any legal, philanthropic, or advisory capacity for Aiden Global or its subsidiaries. We respect her past contributions and wish her continued success. No quote, no tribute, no acknowledgement of the woman who helped build the bones of the brand. They tried to make her exit forgettable. They failed. The internet didn't scroll past it. Industry analysts noticed immediately. One tweeted, "Quietest woman in the room, just left the table she built. Let's see what collapses first." Another said, "Jasmine Vale is gone." If you understand what that means, you're already adjusting your investments. Giselle, in contrast, was photographed smiling the next day, walking out of a midtown spa in sunglasses and heels. Reporters called her the new face of innovation. What they didn't call her was prepared. Because that morning, 3 non-profit partners Jasmine had personally secured pulled out of a pending collaboration with Aiden Global's charity arm. Not loudly, just firmly. Each cited structural misalignment. Corin didn't realize the depth of the damage until the third call came in. "Mr. Aiden, your next interview might need to include a clear explanation of Jasmine's role over the past decade. People are asking if she built more than they thought." He dismissed the PR rep with a clipped, "I'll handle it." But even he could feel it now. The silence was moving. Meanwhile, Jasmine was having breakfast at a quiet cafe in Hyde Park with Levon Cross. No photographers, no reporters. Just Jasmine tea, her preferred avocado toast, and a file folder between them. "You're pulling clean," Levan said, skimming the doc. "I'm not retaliating," she said. "I'm just removing my fingerprints from everything that no longer respects them." Levan looked at her. "You're more merciful than most." "I'm more aware," she replied. "Power doesn't always need to announce itself. It just needs to stop carrying what's already sinking." He leaned back, thoughtful. "What happens when the public finally realizes you were never the accessory? They'll stop asking where I went and start asking why I stayed that long." Jasmine didn't hate Corin. She didn't even feel betrayed anymore. She felt clear. The man she once loved had fallen in love with mirrors. She was never a mirror. She was a map. But Corin no longer wanted direction. He wanted reflection. 2 hours later, Jasmine entered a downtown legal office for a private meeting. She shook hands with the director of a family wealth firm and sat across from 3 estate architects. She pulled a thumb drive from her purse and set it on the table. "I'd like to open a foundation, unattached to my previous name, quietly funded. Female-led, They nodded. Timeline? One asked. Jasmine answered without hesitation. No. Later that evening, she sent a message to a woman she mentored during her early law days. You're being considered for the Board of Cultural Strategy at Linden Equity. Don't say no. They need someone who sees through gloss. The mentee replied, stunned. Why me? Jasmine wrote back, because you listen before you talk. It's rare, and rare is needed right now. By the end of the week, Jasmine had launched the preliminary draft of her own advisory group, secured 3 women-led think tanks as future partners, hired a private communications strategist, not to build her brand, but to protect her boundaries. She didn't want to be famous. She wanted to be effective on her own terms. That Saturday, Levan invited her to a rooftop jazz night in the West End. She almost declined, but something in his message made her pause. You've been moving the world. Let someone hold still with you for one night. She showed up in a long black coat and warm burgundy dress. No designer label, no statement earrings, just presence. When Levan saw her, he didn't say, "You look beautiful." He said, "You look whole," and that was what she needed to hear. They didn't dance right away. They sat on the edge of the rooftop, music in the background, the city lights below. At one point, he reached for her hand, not urgently, just present, and Jasmine didn't pull away. Emotional beat shift. Corin is now scrambling to control narrative. But Jasmine isn't reacting, she's replacing. Every space she used to fill is being intentionally redirected, not with rage, but with strategy. This signals her shift from wife recovering to independent force expanding. CTA 4th, placed at emotional high point. Have you ever stepped away quietly, only to realize your absence made more noise than your presence ever did? If you know that kind of power, leave a comment. We see you. That night, Corin sat alone in the penthouse, staring at a signed invoice. One of Jasmine's final authorizations on a trust they used to co-manage. It read, Authorization, Jasmine Vale, no longer active. He stared at her name, then at the empty chair across from him, for a man who once said she brought him peace. He never realized how much noise was hiding in her stillness. Every powerful system has a code behind it. Jasmine knew that better than anyone. Aiden Global wasn't just a brand. It was a layered structure of trusts, shell companies, offshore holdings, charitable partnerships, and digital trademarks. And she knew where each line of code lived, because she wrote most of it. That Monday morning, Jasmine walked into a downtown building with no logo on the door. Just a plaque, Winden & Care, private portfolio management. Inside was a room built for discretion, frosted glass, voice-protected doors, and silence that didn't feel awkward. It felt respectful. A woman with grey braids and a steel watch stood to greet her. "Ms. Vale," she said warmly. "We've reviewed the full structure. The exits are clean, all signatures protected, no leaks." Jasmine nodded. "Proceed." Within the next hour, the following happened. Jasmine's name was removed from 2 property-linked entities under Aiden Global's legacy wing. Her equity in Aiden Biometric Tech was transferred to a silent holding firm she controlled. The philanthropic endowment she started with Corin split. Her share redirected to a new foundation, one without Aiden's name, PR team, or fingerprint. All legal, all clean, all irreversible, and all done without a single press release. Across the city, Corin Aiden sat in a glass meeting room with a brand strategist who kept adjusting her notes as she spoke. "People aren't buying the narrative," she said. "They're wondering why Jasmine hasn't said anything." That kind of restraint reads, powerful. Corin exhaled, annoyed. "She always was strategic." "Exactly," the woman replied. "Which means this. This silence, it's not random." He tapped his pen against the table. "She's making me look like I lost something irreplaceable." The strategist paused, then said, carefully, "Maybe you did." Corin didn't respond, but in his chest, something tightened. That evening, Jasmine visited a friend's apartment. Not a mansion, not a gated estate, Just a high-rise condo filled with books and warmth. The friend's name was Soraya. They had gone to law school together. Soraya opened the door barefoot, hoodie on, face glowing from an overcooked facial mask. Jasmine smiled. For the first time in weeks, her smile didn't feel rehearsed. Soraya poured tea and turned on soft music. "You okay?" she asked. Jasmine nodded. "Getting there. You look different." "Different? Not broken. Just back." Jasmine took a sip. "That's the goal." Later, Jasmine asked, "Do you ever miss him?" Soraya didn't flinch. "My ex? I don't miss him. I miss the version of me that believed him." That landed. Jasmine stared at the mug between her hands. Soraya asked, "Do you regret anything?" Jasmine thought about that, then shook her head. "No, I just wish I'd left the room sooner." The next morning, Jasmine received a gift. No card, no branding, just a single small black box. Inside, an engraved key with a note folded neatly. "There's a place where people breathe without being watched. Let me take you there sometime." Levin, she didn't reply, but she placed the key gently inside her drawer. Flashback, year 2 of marriage. Corin once asked her to go away with him, to a private island, just the two of them. But halfway through the trip, he flew in a photographer and posted edited photos within hours. She asked, "Why?" He said, "We have to show the world we're still solid." She had smiled back then, softly, but inside she knew something had cracked. Real love doesn't need to be shown to be felt. Now, years later, she was being offered quiet again, this time without conditions. That same week, Corin faced another blow. An anonymous whistleblower revealed that the Aden Global Development Fund had a silent clause tying their public transparency policy to a name that no longer existed on the board, Jasmine Vale. That clause? It meant the company could no longer use Jasmine's legacy achievements in any public marketing, which also meant they couldn't use her name to clean up the mess they'd made. Corin called her. First time in weeks. She let it ring 4 times, then answered. "Jas, Corin." "I didn't think it'd feel this loud." She didn't answer. "I used to hate how quiet you were. Thought it meant you weren't reacting, but now, I hear it all the time." She let the silence sit, then said, "It was never silence. It was restraint." He sighed. "I never said I was sorry." She replied, "You still haven't." Click. Later that week, Jasmine sat with Levin again. This time, not in a public space. They were in a private library she'd once donated to. He asked if she remembered the corner bookshelf she funded. She nodded. "It was the first thing I ever put my name on publicly." He stepped closer. "I hope it won't be the last." She looked at him, long, quiet, sure. "I think I'm ready to build again," she whispered. "With who?" he asked. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away. As Jasmine left the library, snow flurried softly across her shoulders. She didn't pull her coat tighter. She just walked, straight, centered, calm. Because when you've walked away from applause, and nothing inside you needs to be clapped for, you finally get to hear your own steps. The first time Jasmine let Levin take her somewhere with no business to discuss, she didn't expect to enjoy it. No papers, no plans, no prep. Just a quiet town on the edge of Lake Geneva, where his family owned a modest retreat cabin passed down for 3 generations. When they arrived, there was no staff waiting, no itinerary. Levin unlocked the door himself, carried in the groceries, opened the windows. She stood by the fireplace and watched him light it. No performance, no curated playlist, no artificial charm, just warmth, real, earned, steady warmth. Later that evening, they sat on the cabin porch in thick knit blankets, sipping cider and listening to wind move through pine trees. Jasmine hadn't felt this level of stillness in years, not even with Corin, who always needed background noise. "You're good at sitting still," she said softly. Levin chuckled. "That's because I'm not afraid of what comes up when I stop." She looked over at him. That line held weight. "I used to be," she admitted. They didn't talk about Corin. They didn't talk about business. They talked about high school math teachers and jazz records and childhood nicknames that no longer made sense. Levan never leaned too close, never filled silences with flattery, never asked invasive questions, but he watched her, with respect, with care, and Jasmine noticed. Later that night, he cooked. A simple grilled trout with lemon butter and roasted vegetables. She offered to help. He said, "Sit. You've done enough heavy lifting lately." No man had ever said that to her without attaching a price to it. She sat and watched someone make space for her without asking her to shrink. Across the city, Giselle was having dinner with Corin and 2 venture partners. The conversation circled around numbers and optics. One of the investors, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes, asked Corin, "Will your wife be rejoining us next quarter?" Corin blinked. Giselle shifted in her seat. "She won't," Corin said quickly. "Oh." The woman nodded slowly. "That's a shame." Jasmine brought an edge to these discussions. A stabilizer. Giselle sipped her drink but felt the sting. She was being praised for her presence. Jasmine was being remembered for her power. That night, Giselle asked Corin in private, "Do you still talk to her?" "No," he answered. "Too fast." Then added, "She's moved on." Giselle waited for him to say more. He didn't. Meanwhile, back at the cabin, Jasmine stepped outside after dinner to clear her head. Snow had started to fall again, light, like whispers from the sky. Levan joined her on the porch. She glanced up. "Do you ever miss the noise?" "Sometimes, but mostly when I forget what peace feels like." She nodded. Then, after a pause, said, "Corin used to call me Peace, until he craved volume." Levan didn't react. He didn't need to. He was already showing her the difference. They sat again, quiet, close, easy. And then, gently, Levan said, "You don't have to be small to be soft, and you don't have to be loud to be right." She looked at him. That was the moment she let her guard drop, even if only by an inch. Not with fireworks, just a breath, just a lean, and her hand rested over his without hesitation. The next morning, Jasmine opened her laptop to check in on the foundation team. Renner had sent updates. Everything was clean. Everything was running. Attached at the bottom of the email, a small note. "Board seats requested. Press is asking again if you'll comment. Also, Levan left a book for you, titled, 'What Doesn't Seek the Stage?' Fitting, no." "Ah," Jasmine smiled. She didn't open the press request, but she opened the book. In its first few pages, handwritten in the corner, were Levan's words. For the woman who never needed a stage to change the show. She stared at it for a long moment, then closed the book and simply said to the empty room, "He sees me," and she meant it. Corin had volume. Giselle had spotlight. But Jasmine? She had resonance. And in this world, only one of those lasts when the cameras stop flashing. There was no checklist for grieving a living person. No formula for mourning a love that still breathed, still made headlines, still wore suits tailored by someone she once recommended. Jasmine didn't cry often. Not because she refused to. She simply hadn't had a safe place to do so. Until now. The second morning at the cabin, she stayed in bed longer than usual. Not out of laziness, but from something softer. Permission. Levan made breakfast. Didn't knock. Didn't hover. Just texted. "Coffee's warm. Fire's lit. Take your time." She read the message and smiled. No pressure. No timing. No need to perform. She wrapped herself in a throw blanket and came out an hour later, hair loose, no makeup, expression open. Levan looked up from a journal he was writing in and simply nodded. No compliment, no statement, just acceptance. It grounded her more than flowers ever did. Later, she sat across from him near the fireplace and asked something she hadn't asked anyone since the separation began. "Do you think people ever really change?" Levan didn't answer immediately. He took a slow breath, then said, "I think people reveal, then decide how much they're willing to unlearn." She sat with that, then said, "Corin didn't want to unlearn who he was with the world watching. He liked applause too much." Levan stirred his tea. Do you miss him? She stared into her own mug. I miss the idea of being understood without translation, he said quietly. You still deserve that. That afternoon, they took a walk around the lake trail. The path was mostly empty. A few runners. A mother pushing a stroller. Jasmine paused near a bench overlooking the water. She sat. Levin joined her. I used to think, she said, that if I stayed steady long enough, he'd come back around. That I could be the lighthouse and he'd stop chasing storm after storm. Levin said nothing. She continued, but lighthouses don't beg ships to choose them. They just shine. He finally spoke. You never stopped shining. He just preferred fireworks. She exhaled. It wasn't bitterness. It was finally clarity. That night, they sat in the cabin's small kitchen, a single bulb above the table. No music, just the low crackle from the fireplace in the next room. Jasmine asked, "What about you? Ever get pulled by the noise?" Levin gave a soft laugh. Once. I let a woman turn my name into a pitch. Every room we entered, I was the footnote to her narrative. But the thing is, she didn't need me. She needed someone who stayed quiet while she clapped for herself. And did you? Jasmine asked. For a while, he said. But silence without respect, that's erasure, not partnership. She nodded slowly. You know, she said, we never argued much. Not the way people expect, but I spent years managing him. His moods, his image, his wounds. And somewhere in there, I forgot what it felt like to be cared for. Levin reached out, not to touch her face, not to pull her in, but to place his hand on top of hers. Nothing about it was rushed. Everything about it said, you're safe here. They didn't kiss that night. They didn't need to, because trust was already happening, without words, without weight, without performance. The next morning, Jasmine stood outside the cabin, bundled in a coat, her hands warmed by a cup of tea. Snow fell in delicate flakes. Levin came beside her. I have something for you, he said. She looked up. He handed her a folded sheet of paper. It wasn't fancy. It was handwritten. Inside, list of things you don't have to do anymore. Manage someone else's silence. Edit your softness, translate your intentions, apologize for outgrowing a smaller version of yourself. She read it once, then again, and for the first time in a long time, her eyes welled. She didn't hide them. She let the tears fall. Quiet, soft, honest. Levin stepped beside her, didn't touch her, just stayed still. Let her cry. Let her return to herself, piece by piece. As the snow gathered on the railing, Jasmine whispered, I don't want to be strong for other people anymore. I want to be soft for myself. Levin said nothing, because finally, she wasn't alone in her silence. She was heard. The first quarterly review meeting at Aiden Global without Jasmine Vale in the room started late, not because people were unprepared, but because everyone was too aware of the space she used to sit in. Her chair wasn't filled. Her name was gone from the opening slide, but her systems remained. The CFO stumbled through the revenue breakdown. The operations head forgot a key rollout date. The only thing polished was the presentation design, ironically based on a deck template Jasmine had created 4 years ago. At the end of the call, one board member asked, who's handling the strategic advisory role Jasmine left behind? Corin cleared his throat. We've shifted that into a fluid structure across departments. The board member didn't look convinced. So, no one? Corin's jaw tensed. It's being restructured, someone else muttered. She didn't need a title to keep things running. That was the point. Outside the company, partners were beginning to notice the same thing. Emails were slower, decisions less precise, meetings ran long without landing anywhere. One investor finally said it in plain terms. The brand still shines, but the compass is missing. Giselle tried to fill the gap. She showed up on time, wore the perfect outfit, memorized bullet points. But when pressed on strategy, her answers leaned toward optics, not insight. People started smiling less around her, listening less, looping her in later, if at all. She complained to Corin one night at dinner. They're treating me like a prop. Corin rubbed his eyes. They used to treat Jasmine like an anchor, and I thought it was a burden. Giselle looked at him. And now? He didn't answer, but he didn't argue either. Meanwhile, Jasmine was back in her element. In her new foundation's quiet workspace, no one asked her to smile for press photos. No one asked her to validate their status. Her new team, 6 women and 1 man, was focused, sharp, kind, and deeply respectful. They didn't follow her. They listened. That week, she reviewed a funding proposal from a grassroots organization supporting young black girls in tech. She called the founder directly. "I have notes," Jasmine said. "But the vision is solid." The woman on the other end stammered. "Wait, you're calling me directly?" Jasmine smiled. "Yes, why?" "Because people like you usually send people. I used to be the person sent," Jasmine said. "Now I just don't like wasting time." Back at Aiden Global, internal friction escalated. 3 departments submitted duplicate pitches to the same investor group. No one had centralized oversight anymore. A leaked email from a junior executive said, "We were sharper when the quiet one was still in the room." It went viral inside their Slack within hours. Giselle saw it. She didn't forward it, but she saved a screenshot. She met Corin in his office that night. "Do you think she's watching this happen?" she asked. He leaned back in his chair, eyes on the ceiling. "I don't think she needs to," he said. She already knew it would. Jasmine wasn't watching. She was writing an op-ed piece for a private business magazine. Not gossip, not shade, just perspective. Her title, "The Value of the Invisible Architect." It was published with no fanfare. But within 24 hours, it was shared on private boards, linked, in feeds, and internal newsletters across half the city's elite firms. One quote stood out. "When a woman no longer asks for a seat at your table, it's likely because she's already bought the building next door." Corin read it 3 times. Then he closed his laptop and sat in silence. For once, there were no claps to drown out what he felt. Jasmine didn't need to campaign for recognition. She never had. Her absence was speaking. And this time, no one could misquote it. Jasmine didn't post the article link. She didn't quote herself, didn't add a caption, didn't circle back to comments. She let it live, and the world found it. By midweek, private messages started landing in her inbox. CEOs, former interns, non-profit, founders, and women she didn't know personally, but who had followed her work for years. Some wrote paragraphs, others just wrote, "Thank you." I felt seen. That line about building the next building, that's what I needed today. They forgot who helped them rise. You reminded them, with elegance. Even Soraya, her law school friend, sent a voice note. "Sis, you made me pause mid-litigation. You didn't name him, but we all know. And that's power." Jasmine smiled, placed her phone face down, and let the silence wrap around her like a robe. That evening she was invited to a closed roundtable with 3 city leaders, including a senator's chief of staff, to discuss quiet reinvestment into overlooked districts. She almost declined. But the request letter wasn't about optics. It referenced her past work, the initiatives she seeded, the policies she backed, the budgets she helped restructure. No one mentioned her as Corin Aiden's wife, only as Jasmine Vale, strategist, architect, force. She accepted. The event wasn't televised. It wasn't meant to be. Inside a clean office space near the river, 12 people sat around a circular table. No hierarchy, no microphones. Jasmine wore a brown knit dress, simple earrings, and confidence that didn't have to speak loudly. When it was her turn, she said, "We can't call it inclusion if we're inviting people into rooms designed to reject their language. Change the room, or build your own." The room nodded. One woman whispered to her after, "You were always the compass." He just got the applause. At Aiden Global, Corin was spinning. His team had booked a last-minute PR campaign to cover the cracks in leadership. Giselle's name was floated for a new position, VP of Public Innovation. But the reaction was lukewarm. Some congratulated her, Others quietly began exiting conversations when her name was brought up. In private circles, she was referred to as the shadow step, bright, poised, but without grounding. She felt it, even when people smiled at her. She felt the hesitation, the weight of comparison. And comparisons, especially the unspoken ones, were heavy. That night, Giselle asked Corin, "Do you regret it?" He didn't ask what. He already knew. He poured a drink, took a long pause and said, "I regret thinking quiet meant replaceable." She blinked. "Is she coming back?" "She's already gone," he said. "But the parts of her we ignored, they stayed. And now we're walking through them without a guide." Giselle nodded, not in agreement, in understanding. She knew now, being chosen didn't mean being respected, and being public didn't mean being permanent. Elsewhere, Jasmine walked through the glass doors of her foundation's first physical space, a small building in a former warehouse district now being restored. Her team had gathered. Soft claps filled the room, not for show, but out of real gratitude. They had named the space the Quiet House, a subtle tribute, a sanctuary. Inside were rooms for workshops, healing spaces, and private coaching pods, for young women entering fields they were once told didn't belong to them. Jasmine walked through, touched the edge of the first door, and smiled. It wasn't a palace, but it was hers, built from the lessons, the restraint, the storms, and the silence. Ever had your reputation speak louder than someone else's promotion? Tell us what happened when your work spoke, even after they stopped saying your name. Back in her home, Jasmine sat at her desk late that night. She opened her journal and wrote, "They mistook calm for weakness. But calm was the foundation, and they forgot. Loud structures collapse faster." Then she wrote another note, this one to herself. "You're not hard to love. You're just not easy to use." She folded it, tucked it in a drawer. The next morning, she received a small envelope. No return address. Inside, an apology note. Simple, unfolded. From Corin. "I built a mirror and called it a woman. You gave me a map and I treated it like wallpaper. I finally understand what you meant. And I'm sorry." No signature, no request, no hint at reunion, just regret. She didn't reply, because healing didn't always need to loop back. Sometimes it just needed to land. They removed her from the spotlight, but her name kept echoing in rooms they could no longer fill. Because you can replace a title, but not the reason the title ever meant something. Levin picked her up in a car that didn't announce wealth. No chauffeur. No tinted windows, just a charcoal grey hybrid sedan with a clean dashboard and a playlist queued but not playing. Jasmine noticed that. She noticed everything now. They didn't call it a date. They hadn't labelled anything, but the way he opened the door, waited for her to sit, then walked around without rushing told her enough. This wasn't about performance. It was about intention. "Where are we going?" she asked. "It's not fancy," he said. "But it's calm." She smiled. "Then it's perfect." He took her to a small jazz bistro tucked between a used bookstore and an old photography shop. No LED signs. No velvet ropes. Inside, warm wood, soft gold light, tables close enough for comfort but not tension. They were seated near the back, by a window with a view of a flickering street lamp and bare branches moving slightly in the wind. The band hadn't started yet, but the air was already rich with something honest. The menu was handwritten on recycled paper. No QR codes, no corporate logos. Jasmine glanced over it, then glanced at Levin. "You've been here before," she said, half statement. "Once," he replied. "A few years ago. I remember they had this rosemary chicken that stayed on my mind for a month." She grinned. "That's a high bar." He shrugged. "I don't eat places that forget how to feel like places." That line stayed with her. They ordered, talked softly. No big disclosures, no pointed questions, just lightness. He asked her what book she reread when the world felt heavy. She said, "Letters to a Young Poet." He said, "Of course you do." She raised an eyebrow. Why? He replied, because it's a book that doesn't give answers. It gives presence. That's you. She looked away for a second, because no one had described her like that without wanting something in return. But he didn't press. He just sipped his water and waited for the next natural moment. When the food came, they ate slowly, shared bites, talked about old movies, places they hadn't visited yet, childhood misunderstandings that still made them laugh. There was no checklist being filled, just space being shared. After the main course, he asked if she wanted dessert. She nodded. Only if they have the espresso cake. They do. He smiled. I checked before we came. She blinked. You planned that? I planned for the possibility, he said. Not control, not dominance, just care. The band began playing as dessert arrived. Soft saxophone, a piano thread weaving between notes. And then, quiet. The kind of quiet you don't rush to fill. Jasmine looked across the table at him. You're careful, she said. I try to be, not with words, with people. He nodded. They're harder to fix. She stared at him for a long moment, then asked, what scares you? He didn't flinch. Being someone's moment instead of someone's memory. That landed. She whispered, that used to be me. They stayed even after their plates were cleared. The waiter refilled their water twice. No one rushed them. No one interrupted. When Levin finally stood and offered her his hand, she took it without thinking. The walk to the car was slow, quiet, gentle. He opened the door. She paused. I don't know what this is yet, she said. Levin looked at her without a single ounce of urgency. We don't have to name it, just respect it. She nodded and sat down. Back at her place, he didn't ask to come in. He parked, walked her to her door, hands in his pockets, comfortable, present. She unlocked the door, turned to him. I had a good night. So did I. No reach, no expectation, but she stepped forward. And this time, she kissed him, not because she owed it, not because it was expected, but because she wanted to. Soft, honest, no rush. When she pulled back, he said nothing. He just smiled and walked away. Jasmine stood at her door, hands still on the knob, breath still soft in her chest. She had been praised before, worshipped, photographed, branded, but tonight she had been respected, understood, seen. The next morning, Jasmine woke with something unfamiliar easing through her chest. Not adrenaline, not tension, not a loop of what-ifs playing in her head, just calm. Her first thought wasn't about the kiss. It was about the way he didn't stay. Levin hadn't lingered, hadn't tested her boundaries, hadn't tried to define the night. He gave her something rarer than romance. He gave her space. She stood by her window, holding a warm cup of tea. Below, the city was already moving. Cars slicing through slush, bundled up figures rushing to work. But inside her home, everything was still. She didn't rush to label what was happening between her and Levin. She just knew that for the first time in a long time, she wasn't rehearsing her feelings. She was just feeling them. Later that morning, she met with her foundation's team. The meeting was brief, efficient, but layered with creative energy. New initiatives, more outreach, a partnership in development with a literacy program in the South Side. Jasmine contributed thoughtfully, but her team could tell her energy had shifted, more grounded, less guarded. When the meeting ended, her assistant Renna walked with her toward the elevator. I know it's none of my business, Renna said with a tiny grin, but whatever happened last night, hold on to it. Jasmine gave a sideways smile. You think I look different? I think you stopped flinching when someone calls your name. Meanwhile, in Aiden Global's upper floor boardroom, Corin's voice bounced off glass walls and impatient faces. The quarterly numbers were fine, but the narrative wasn't landing. Media outlets were subtly pulling their support. The company's story, its human angle, was dissolving. One board member cleared his throat. People don't relate to numbers, they relate to people. And right now, we don't have a person the public trusts, Corin raised an eyebrow. They trust me. A beat. Another board member replied, they trusted you. When Jasmine stood next to you. Across the city, Levan sat in his office staring at a book proposal on his desk. He hadn't written in years, but last night changed something. He picked up his pen and scribbled a note on the cover page. Title revision. Not how to lead try, what to build when no one's watching. Then he leaned back and replayed Jasmine's kiss in his mind. Not the touch, but the look in her eyes afterward. Peace, permission, presence. He hadn't known he needed that until she gave it without asking anything in return. Jasmine returned home just after dusk. A package waited at her door. No label, no brand. Inside, a copy of Letters to a Young Poet, her favorite book. Tucked inside the front cover, a handwritten note. Page 56. You once said it holds a mirror. I want to read it through your eyes this time. L. She turned to the page. Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves. Jasmine closed the book gently and held it against her chest. She didn't text him. She didn't need to. The moment already said enough. Corin, on the other hand, was unraveling. That night, he stood in front of the mirror, staring at his own reflection longer than he usually could tolerate. He had the empire, the suits, the events, the curated love story, but somehow he looked smaller, weaker. He opened his drawer and pulled out Jasmine's old notepad, the one she used for early Aiden Global strategy meetings. He flipped to the back, where she always scribbled private notes, reminders, cautions, insights she didn't say aloud in rooms full of ego. One note read, when the foundation is ignored, don't blame the roof when it caves in. He closed the notebook slowly. Then he sat in the dark, for the first time without noise, and let the silence do what it used to do when she was still around, center him. Only this time, it was too late. Back in her home, Jasmine lit a candle, put on soft music, and read a few pages from the book Levan sent. The kiss lingered not as an event, but as a promise. That something steady could be beautiful too. That maybe the next man who touched her heart would hold it with two hands, not just show it off. Some love begins in grand gestures. Some love begins in deep longing, but the kind that lasts. It begins in rooms with no stage, and Jasmine had finally walked into one of those. Aiden Global's quarterly brand meeting opened with confidence, but it didn't end with it. The media team rolled out their new era deck, sleek transitions, high-resolution visuals, and the carefully crafted positioning of Giselle as the new face of growth. But the questions that followed had nothing to do with color palettes or expansion zones. They had everything to do with structure. Who approved the final community reinvestment delay? What happened to the partnership Jasmine spearheaded in Southeast Chicago? Why did two of our charity arms withdraw their matching grant campaigns? The lead strategist fumbled for answers. The CFO pulled up incorrect data. And Corin, he stayed silent just a second too long, long enough to make the board uneasy. It wasn't about mistakes. It was about the pattern. The thread they hadn't seen unraveling until the person holding it let go. Across the room, one board member whispered to another. She was the stabilizer. We all knew it. He just didn't want to admit it. Later that evening, a transcript of the meeting was leaked to an internal Slack channel. Within hours, it made its way to a journalist known for clean corporate exposés. By the next day, a feature hit. Aiden Global's quiet shift. The woman missing from the table. It wasn't scandalous. It was measured. It mentioned Jasmine only once, but the entire article breathed her absence. Meanwhile, Jasmine was in a closed strategy session with 3 city planners and 2 non-profit liaisons. They were building something new, not flashy, not rushed, but strong, foundational. She wore no name badge. Introduced herself simply, Jasmine Vale, advisor. No one flinched, because everyone knew who she was. Later that afternoon, she stopped by her foundation's community space. One of the girls in their mentorship program handed her a sticky note. On it, Miss Vale, I want to build my own table someday. Thank you for showing me you don't have to sit at theirs forever." Jasmine didn't cry. She folded the note, tucked it into her bag, then turned back toward the conference room, because this was the table she was building now. Back at Aiden Global, Corin sat alone in his office. The light above him flickered slightly. Maintenance delay. He reread the article for the third time. His name was still mentioned more than Jasmine's, but the weight of his presence had shifted. Once, he was the visionary. Now, he was being studied in contrast to her absence. He opened his phone and searched her name, not in public databases, but in the archived drafts of board documents they once co-wrote. In one version of a funding proposal, she had scribbled in the margins, "Impact fades fast without integrity." He closed the file and exhaled, because the truth wasn't new. It was just finally visible. Giselle, meanwhile, stood in front of the press at a community donation drive, smiling, poised, rehearsed. But the questions weren't about the check, they were about the story. Is it true? Jasmine Vale was the original author of Aiden's community policy. How do you define your role differently from hers? Will she be returning in any advisory capacity? Giselle smiled tightly. "I believe we're entering a new chapter, with new energy. I respect the past but focus on the future." But even she knew her answers weren't landing. The crowd didn't clap as loudly. They weren't clapping for impact. They were clapping for etiquette. And that sound doesn't echo for long. Jasmine, on the other hand, received an email that evening from one of Aiden's most tenured board members. Subject: request for private conversation. Body: I don't believe in undoing the past, but I do believe in strengthening what's left. Would you consider a discreet conversation? No PR, no cameras, just clarity. K. Ray. She didn't reply immediately, but she didn't delete it either. Aiden Global wasn't collapsing. Not yet. But it was trembling, because the woman who once held its spine together with quiet steadiness was no longer holding her breath for their success. She was building something else, and the world was starting to notice. The house looked different without her light inside it. 3 days passed before Jasmine responded. Her email reply to K. Ray was 3 sentences long. "I've received your message. I'm open to a brief conversation. Discretion and clarity are non-negotiable. No greeting, no sign-off, no emotion." They met at a members-only lounge tucked inside an art museum, one of the few places where high-level business conversations could happen without surveillance. Jasmine arrived early. She wore soft grey slacks, a crisp black blouse, and her presence like armor. Not to defend, but to signal that she no longer needed to explain her worth. K. Ray, one of Aiden Global's earliest board members, entered with a single leather folder and a face lined with quiet tension. "Ms. Vale," he greeted, not Jasmine. "Miss Vale." Respect, not familiarity. That mattered. They sat. Tea was poured. No press, no recordings. K. Ray slid the folder across the table. "An advisory retainer, independent, flexible. You'd hold no liability. You'd report to no one." Jasmine didn't reach for the folder. Instead, she asked, "Why now?" He didn't blink. "Because there's a difference between charisma and command, and I think we've all realized which one you carried." She leaned back, measured him. "I built your framework. You let him dress it up." K. Ray nodded once. "And we've been living inside a dressed-up shell ever since." She finally opened the folder, reviewed the terms, then closed it again. "I'm not interested in rebuilding something that rewards whoever shouts the loudest." K. Ray folded his hands. "Then let us rebuild it to reward what lasts." She didn't answer then. She told him she'd consider it. And she did, but not alone. That night, she sat across from Levan in his apartment. He cooked, again. This time, seared scallops and roasted squash. She poured wine and asked, "What would you do if they came to you with this offer?" He didn't hesitate. "I'd ask if it serves my peace or my pride." She stared at her glass for a moment. "And if it serves both, then you better be sure your peace comes first." They didn't talk about Corin, not directly, but he lived in the pauses. And then, Jasmine finally said aloud, "I'm not going back, but I might be willing to stand nearby, quietly, on my own terms." Levin nodded. "That's not compromise, that's strategy." At Aiden Global, Corin was having a very different kind of evening. The COO informed him that 2 major account managers were seeking outside counsel on their contracts, concerned about vision drift. Translation: they didn't trust the leadership anymore. Corin paced his office after they left. The walls, once lined with innovation awards and magazine covers, now felt like echoes of someone else's story. He pulled down one frame. Inside was a photo. Him and Jasmine, 5 years ago, standing in front of the first flagship store. She was smiling. He was holding scissors at the ribbon. She had built it. He had cut the tape. Now the store still stood, but the foundation beneath it, shaking. Giselle noticed too. Meetings were colder. Eyes avoided her more, not out of rudeness, but confusion. She was no longer the face of new energy. She was a placeholder, an echo of someone no longer there, but still shaping the room. She tried to ask Corin that night if he thought Jasmine would ever return. He didn't answer. He just poured another drink and stared out the window. Elsewhere, Jasmine drafted her own terms. She called Renner into her home office and dictated word for word how any strategic proximity with Aiden Global would work. No PR campaigns, no public labeling, no participation in shareholder meetings, no voice unless the structure is sound. Renner asked, "And if they say no?" Jasmine shrugged. "Then they never needed me. They just needed the illusion that I hadn't walked away. They thought she might return and rescue them." But Jasmine Vale had no intention of saving what refused to be stable. She wasn't returning to rebuild their empire. She was deciding whether to let them borrow her blueprint, on her terms. The request came in the middle of the afternoon. A simple text message. "Corin, would you meet me once? Just us. I won't ask for anything. I just need to talk." Jasmine stared at the screen for a long time, not out of hesitation, but because she had nothing left to say, and somehow, still more than he could ever expect. She didn't reply immediately. She let the silence breathe, then typed back, "1 hour, no cameras, no spin, I'll pick the place." The next evening they met at the rooftop of a quiet hotel near River North. Not the penthouse, just a mid-level terrace with heat lamps and no guests. Jasmine arrived first. She wore a dark navy coat, hair pulled back, a neutral expression that didn't bend toward nostalgia or anger. When Corin stepped onto the terrace, he looked older than she remembered, not in age but in energy, like the weight of choices had finally settled into his frame. "Thanks for coming," he said. She nodded once. "Let's not waste it." They stood at the edge of the terrace, watching the river move below. Corin broke the silence first. "Do you hate me?" Jasmine looked straight ahead. "No. Do you regret marrying me?" She exhaled. "No, I regret assuming you'd grow in the same direction I did." He nodded slowly. "I thought if I kept performing, I could stay worthy of the applause. But it turns out, the only person I really wanted it from was the one who never asked for it." Jasmine didn't blink. "I wasn't your audience," she said. "I was your partner. You just forgot what that meant when the room started clapping." He turned to face her now. "I was weak. You were ungrateful." That stung. He didn't deny it. "I thought being chosen publicly meant I mattered, and I thought staying silent meant I was protecting what we built," she added. They both let that land. "I miss your mind," he said. "More than anything. The way you thought through chaos. The way you didn't rush to fix, but still managed to calm it." She said nothing, because that was the truth, and truth didn't need repeating. Finally, he asked the question she knew was coming. "Is there anything I could have done to keep you?" She looked him in the eyes, listened. "The first time I went quiet." They stood there for a while, not as lovers, not even as old friends, just as two people facing the version of each other they helped shape and broke. Corin reached into his coat and handed her a folded envelope. "This isn't a letter, it's an acknowledgement." Jasmine didn't take it. "I don't need it. I know," he said. "But I did." Jasmine turned to leave. Corin called after her. "One last thing." She paused. "I know I made you feel small, but I see now. You were never the background. You were the blueprint." She didn't turn back. She simply nodded. The same way she did the night he praised another woman as everything he ever wanted. But this time, the nod wasn't surrender. It was confirmation. Back in her car, she sat for a moment. No tears, no anger, just breath. She opened her purse, pulled out her phone, and typed a note. Closure isn't about hearing sorry. It's about knowing you don't need it anymore. She saved it and drove home. Some meetings aren't for repair. They're for release. And when Jasmine walked off that terrace, she didn't walk away bitter. She walked away free. The board gathered in a private room at the Metropolitan Club. It wasn't a public meeting. There were no name tags, no assistants, no photographers, just 10 decision makers. And one empty chair. Until Jasmine walked in. She wore charcoal, neither aggressive nor meek. Her heels didn't echo on the floor. Her silence did. Everyone stood when she entered. She didn't ask them to. Kay Ray greeted her first. "Miss Varley, thank you for accepting." "I'm not accepting anything yet," she said calmly. "I'm here to clarify." They sat. Someone reached for the pitcher of water to pour her a glass. She held up a hand. "I'll serve myself." It was a small gesture, but in that room, it said everything. She opened her folder. No legal team behind her. No publicist. Just her. She slid the one-page proposal across the table. "This is my counter." Kay Ray picked it up, read it slowly. It was shorter than expected, but sharper. 3 lines. "I will advise, not repair. I will speak, but not defend. I will contribute, but never cover again." They sat in silence for a beat. Then someone said, "This is bold." Jasmine met his eyes. "So is pretending the building didn't crack until I left." Kay Ray looked to the others, then back to her. "We accept. If you do." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she said, "He called her everything he wanted. But I was everything he needed. And that's not ego. That's evidence." She stood, then looked to Kay Ray again. "I won't sit at the table. But you'll know I'm in the room, if it's worth being in." And then, like she had at the gala, she nodded. Once, clean, final, and walked out. Levin was waiting downstairs. He didn't ask how it went. He saw it in her walk, in the way her shoulders didn't hold tension, in the calm on her face. "Ready to go?" he asked. "Yes," she said, then paused, and added, "Not just from here. From that chapter." In the car, she turned toward him. "Do you believe in legacy?" He thought for a moment. "Only if it doesn't require applause." She smiled. "Then we agree." That night, Jasmine sat on her terrace. No gala lights, no microphones, just wind. And a single soft line, she whispered to herself. Some power doesn't need position. It needs peace. Jasmine didn't win. She didn't lose. She simply chose, and that, above all else, was the mark of someone who remembered her worth, without waiting for the world to repeat it. Millie twirled in her sheep costume twice before Jasmine finished pinning the felt ears to her headband. "You think I'll make the crowd laugh?" Millie asked, staring into the mirror. Jasmine crouched to Millie's level. "Only if they're lucky." Millie grinned, toothless in the front again. Her school's winter play had no lead roles, but that didn't stop her from practicing her one line like it was the climax of a Broadway production. "I got my line," she whispered. Jasmine leaned in. "Let me hear it." Millie stood taller, cleared her throat, then delivered it with full volume. The shepherds came running because the sky was loud. It wasn't supposed to be loud, but Jasmine clapped anyway. She stood, adjusted Millie's hood again, then reached into a drawer. "I almost forgot," she said. pulling out a small gold bell on a thin, soft necklace string. "What's that?" "Something to make your sheep extra special," Millie gasped. "It's pretty." Jasmine tied it around her daughter's neck. "If you get nervous on stage, just touch it. I'll hear it from the crowd. You'll know I'm close." Millie nodded. Her fingers wrapped around the bell like it held bravery itself. Outside, snow hadn't started falling yet. But the clouds promised it would. Levin had texted mid-morning, "I'll be there, front row. Tell her to look left if she gets nervous." But when Jasmine stepped into the school auditorium with Millie, Levin wasn't in the front row. He wasn't in the second either. He was sitting farther back, near the door, quiet, unnoticed, head down. It wasn't Levin. It was Corin. And he wasn't looking at the stage. He was watching Jasmine. She froze for a beat, her hand resting on Millie's back. Millie was too excited to notice. She was skipping toward the backstage entrance with the rest of her class. A teacher took over, clipped her check-in badge, and waved Jasmine off. She was free to sit, but the only empty seats were 2 rows behind Corin. Jasmine took one, not directly behind him. 2 seats over, diagonal, deliberate. She pulled her coat tighter, not for cold, but for calm. The lights dimmed. Children's voices echoed from behind the stage curtain. Some whispered their lines, some forgot their shoes. A few were dressed as stars. One tripped over the moon cutout and cried. Parents laughed softly. Phones came out, but Jasmine watched the edge of the curtain where Millie would appear. She didn't scan the room again until the curtain rose. Millie was third in line. Her sheep ears flopped to one side, slightly uneven. But her smile was straight. She spotted her mother instantly. Then her eyes flicked to the back row. And to Jasmine's quiet surprise, Millie waved. To Corin. He didn't wave back, but his posture straightened, and Jasmine's stomach twisted. Not from fear, not from hate, from the cruel, unexpected ache of history. The scene changed. Millie moved to the front row of children. The bell at her neck shimmered in the lights. Then she stepped forward, took a deep breath, and shouted. The shepherds came running, because the sky was loud. The crowd clapped. A few chuckled. Jasmine laughed softly, but her eyes weren't on the stage anymore. They were on Corin's hands. They were fisted in his lap. Jaw clenched, as if that one line broke something inside him. After the scene change, the children exited stage left. Jasmine stood to stretch, pretending to need a walk. She turned toward the door. But Corin was already gone. No footsteps, no sound, just gone. In the hallway, her phone buzzed. Levin, running late, 3 minutes away. Parking now. She didn't respond. Instead, she walked into the girls' restroom and splashed water on her face. She looked in the mirror, didn't smile, didn't cry, just stood until the reflections stopped spinning. Back in the auditorium, Levin slid into the seat she had saved beside her. He smelled like winter air and pine. Did I miss her line? Jasmine nodded. She nailed it. He reached for her hand under the folded coat on her lap. She let him. He leaned in, softly asked, "You okay?" She nodded, then whispered, "What are you really trying to be?" He blinked, then exhaled, and said, "Someone worth being pointed at." Jasmine didn't look at him, didn't smile, but she whispered back, "Then stay." Millie's tiny fingers flew to her neck the second she stepped onto the stage. The gold bell was gone. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. The other children stepped into place for the final scene, a quiet nativity, ending. But Millie's eyes searched the audience, wide and wet. Levin stood halfway, but Jasmine stopped him with a whisper. "Sit." He hesitated, glanced at her, then slowly lowered himself. Millie didn't cry. She didn't walk off stage. She stood frozen in her place, mouth closed, hands still gently pressing her throat like the bell might reappear. In the very last row of the dim auditorium, a figure shifted in the shadows. Corin Vassil, leaning forward, elbows on knees, fingers curled around the string of a small golden bell. It hung loose from his hand. No expression, no movement. But Jasmine saw it clearly, saw everything. She didn't gasp, didn't nudge Levan, didn't do what her chest begged her to. She simply looked forward, straight ahead, let the silence press against her spine. Let the moment burn. A little boy beside Millie whispered her line, then nudged her. She blinked, nodded, took one careful step forward, and instead of her original words, she said softly, "The loud sky still hears you." The audience didn't know it wasn't the script, but Jasmine knew. Levan knew. Millie had rewritten herself, quietly, strongly. The crowd clapped. Jasmine didn't. When the show ended and the curtains closed, parents surged forward to greet their kids. Levan stood, eager to go backstage, to find Millie, to tell her she did well. Jasmine didn't follow him. She moved toward the far back aisle instead, to where Corin had been sitting. But by the time she got there, he was gone again. Only the bell remained, left carefully on the seat, a note folded beneath it. She didn't open it right away. She waited until they were home. Millie already asleep, cheeks flushed from sugar cookies and hugs. Levan in the kitchen, talking softly on the phone with his sister. Jasmine stood in the laundry room, door half closed. Unfolded the note. It read, "She's not mine. I know that now. But I never had a thing that made me feel proud, until I saw her lift her chin and keep going. I'll never take that from her again. I wanted the bell because I thought she needed me to carry it. But she doesn't. See." Jasmine folded the paper again. No tears came, only breath. Heavy, steady breath. She took the bell and hung it by the front door, just high enough for Millie to see it every day. She didn't say who gave it back. She didn't say anything at all. The next morning, Christmas Eve's hush set in early. Levan made pancakes, burned the first round. Millie wore the sheep ears again. Jasmine drank her coffee while watching snow start to collect on the porch railing. The world felt simple again, but not small, not safe. Still, she didn't flinch. That afternoon, as they prepared to visit Levan's family gathering, Jasmine stepped out onto the porch for air. Across the street, a black car idled. Same one she'd noticed 3 days in a row. But this time, it didn't drive off. It parked. The window rolled down. Corin sat inside. No words. No wave. He waited. She walked down the steps and crossed the street, opened the passenger door and sat. No greeting. No apology. No eye contact. She stared straight ahead. He did the same. "You think showing up at a school play makes it right?" she said. "No." "Then why come?" "Because I knew I ruined the only memory she might have had of me. I needed one that didn't end with a slammed door." "She still doesn't know who you are. She doesn't need to." A pause. Then Jasmine asked, "What are you going to do now?" He didn't answer right away. Then, disappear. This time, with intention. Her voice cracked, just slightly. "Why?" "Because I know what it means now to stand in the same room as something good, and know I'll destroy it if I stay." He turned to her. Jasmine finally looked at him. His face held no anger, no threat, only defeat. And in that look, peace. She nodded, got out of the car, walked away, didn't look back. Later that night, as Millie unwrapped her first Christmas Eve gift, Jasmine told her the bell would hang by the door forever. Millie asked why. Jasmine answered, "So you'll always remember what you held on to, even when it was missing." The snow had held overnight. It blanketed the city in white quiet. Downtown Chicago looked like it had been paused mid-motion, mid-ambition. Jasmine stood by the wide windows of their apartment, still in her robe, holding the warmest mug she could find. She hadn't slept. Not out of restlessness, but because there was nothing more to brace for. Corin was gone, and this time, it wasn't a warning. It wasn't a test. It wasn't one of his theatrical games. It was an end. She could feel it in her spine. Millie came out of her room with her notebook tucked under one arm. The other held her stuffed bear. She stood next to Jasmine and looked out too. "Can I write something in the snow?" she asked. Jasmine nodded. Of course. She watched her daughter pull on boots and walk carefully across the porch. Steps, then carve soft words into the whiteness with the toe of her shoe. She wrote, "I'm not scared of quiet anymore," then smiled to herself and ran back inside. An hour later, Jasmine opened her inbox. There it was, an unsigned email. No subject line, no body text, just a PDF attachment. She clicked it. A scanned letterhead, Navarro Legacy Holdings, Corin's Family Estate Division. Attached were 2 forms. One was a resignation from all controlling positions. The second, a legal redirection of all remaining family investments in Jasmine's name, under a new trust account. One clause caught her eye. This is not a debt paid. It is an apology left. There was no contact number, no return email. Just the final digital whisper of a man who had spent his whole life trying to be feared, and finally understood the difference between fear and dignity. Levan came home early from errands. The moment he walked in, he saw the look on her face. "What is it?" She passed him her phone. He read silently, then said, "So this is how he disappears." Jasmine nodded. "He meant it," she said. Levan set the phone down. "What are you going to do with all that?" "I don't know yet. But you're not giving it back." "No." He smiled, gently. "Good." Christmas morning arrived like a slow sunrise. No chaos, no rush. They unwrapped gifts one by one, no paper fights, no shouting, just smiles. Millie opened a package from her school friend. Inside was a blank book and 3 gel pens. She gasped and hugged it like gold. "I'm going to start writing real stories now." Jasmine looked at her. "Real ones?" Millie nodded. "Not the ones where everyone's perfect. The ones where they try." After lunch, Levan offered to take Millie to visit his aunt 2 floors down. "Give you some space," he said. Jasmine thanked him with a squeeze on the wrist. When the apartment was quiet again, she lit the vanilla candle Millie made in class. Let it fill the room slowly. Then sat at the dining table and opened her laptop. She didn't touch the trust account yet. She opened a new document instead. At the top, she typed, "What you leave behind, notes for Millie," then stared at it. After a long minute, she began to type again. "There are men who will try to make you feel small so they can feel large, and sometimes they will have money, or names, or silence that makes rooms freeze when they walk in. But I need you to remember, silence can mean 2 things, fear or respect. One destroys, one protects. Your story will teach you the difference." She paused, then wrote, "He didn't protect me, but he respected the strength that did. That's why he gave it all away." That evening, a letter arrived. Real mail, no postmark. Jasmine opened it with careful fingers. Inside was a card with 1 line written in tight, angular script. "Legacy isn't what survives you. It's what you finally admit." No signature, no return address. But Jasmine folded it and slipped it into the back of her daughter's new storybook anyway. Let time decide if Millie would ever read it. The apartment buzzed with leftover heat and pine-scented air. Music played low. Dishes were still stacked, waiting to be washed later. Everything looked normal, but it wasn't, because the kind of shift that had happened could never be undone. That night, Jasmine sat by the window again. Levan joined her. "What now?" he asked softly. "I don't want to run anything," she said. "Not a fund, not a company. I just want to use what he left for something that doesn't repeat his mistakes." He nodded. "You don't have to explain it." She looked over at him, and for the first time leaned fully against his side. "You stayed," she whispered. "I always will." Upstairs, Millie was drawing. She wasn't tracing this time. She was creating. In the middle of the page, she wrote, "This is a story about a girl who watched people lie but still told the truth." She looked at it, then added in smaller letters, and she didn't even need to yell. The email had no subject line, no sender name, just 3 words glowing in the inbox. Was she safe? Jasmine stared at them longer than she should have. She didn't answer, didn't delete it either. She closed the laptop, walked quietly to Millie's room. She was asleep, half twisted in her blanket. Her hand still gripped a pen. Her new storybook was open on her chest. She was safe, not because Corin Navarro made it so, but because Jasmine had. She reached down, gently pulled the blanket over Millie, kissed her temple, and whispered, "You don't need to be afraid of legacies. You're making your own." In the days that followed, Jasmine never heard from Corin again. Not directly, but she saw his fingerprints in quiet places. One of the developers who had always rejected Jasmine's studio proposal emailed her out of nowhere. He said a mutual contact recommended her. He was ready to back her. The proposal she submitted, accepted in 3 days. They offered her a floor in the old Mercer building, downtown, glass windows, no pressure, just creative control. She called Levin from outside the building that day. "Do you believe in clean slates?" she asked. He chuckled. "Only if you bring your own pen." Jasmine smiled. "I've got pens now." A week later, a package arrived at their door. No name, just wait. Inside, the small gold bell Millie lost at the school play, wrapped in silk. Next to it, a note. She wore it like it meant something. "I never knew how to do that." Jasmine folded the note slowly. Millie screamed when she saw the bell, held it to her chest. "I thought it was gone forever." "It found its way back," Jasmine said softly. "Like people?" Jasmine looked at her daughter, thought of Corin, of the empire he left behind, and simply said, "Sometimes." Millie's birthday came. She turned 7. They didn't throw a big party. She didn't want one. She wanted a quiet table, candles, Jasmine, Levan, Auntie Jill from upstairs, and a cake with red icing that said, "Here's to the good kind of loud." After cake, she showed Jasmine a drawing she'd been working on for a week. It was a tall building. One window was lit up yellow. In the window, 3 people stood together. "Is that us?" Jasmine asked. Millie nodded. "Me, you, and him." "Who's him?" "The man who gave us the bell back." Jasmine's breath caught. She didn't correct her, didn't explain, just said, "It's beautiful." Later that night, Jasmine sat on the balcony. The city had thawed a bit, but the air still carried cold clarity. She opened the letter again, Corin's trust file. She didn't cry, didn't flinch. She just stared at the line again. "This is not a debt paid. It is an apology left." She whispered to the air, "I accept," then smiled slightly. Quietly, Jasmine never raised her voice. She didn't argue at that gala. She didn't compete with a younger woman in a tighter dress. She watched, she nodded, and she walked away with everything. Corin thought attention meant victory, but in the world they built, silence was louder. And Jasmine used it to remind him she wasn't his accessory. She was the architect. To anyone watching this, if you've ever been overlooked, replaced, or underestimated, let this story remind you, you don't need to react loudly. You don't need to break down. You don't need revenge to feel whole. You need peace. You need clarity. And you need to know when to stop explaining your worth. Because the loudest person in the room often has the least to offer. And the calmest one already owns the room. If you believe dignity wins, if you've ever nodded through betrayal, and still built your next chapter stronger, like this video, comment your favorite moment of Jasmine's quiet strength, and subscribe for more stories where silence speaks louder than pride.